Hello and welcome back to Coinscrum. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Bruce Pond, founder at Ocean Protocol. Hi Bruce, thanks for joining us.
Hi, nice to be here.
Great. So, on our show, we're quite often talking about digital assets in terms of financial instruments that kind of everyone kind of comprehends and understands and knows of. But today we're going to look at the idea of data as a commodity, and obviously this is something that you're looking at with Ocean Protocol and with blockchain technology as it stands now. That now becomes an option. Personally, I was always saying to people that I think that some of the big data silos, such as Google and Facebook, probably are more at risk of disruption going forward than your average bank. So it's going to be really interesting to hear your thoughts on this and what the future might look like. But before we dive in, you're a bit of an old timer in the space. We'll touch on some of the works. I think some of that's relevant that you've done before in the run up to Ocean. Would you mind just giving us a little bit brief background pre-blockchain and then how you got into the space?
Sure, happy to. I joined blockchain 2013. Before that, I'd spent over a decade building banks around the world. And in doing so, I was able to get kind of a firsthand view of how banking systems in countries got built up. And in seeing that, and then juxtaposing that against what I saw in the blockchain, it was a clear no-brainer that the way to scale financial systems, the power of blockchain was compelling. And so in 2013 already, I had made the decision with my co-founders, Trent and Mash McConaughey, to jump into this space.
Yeah, and I know back then, I think if anyone's been around for the time and see the various narratives change, around 2013, 2014 was when we were, banks and other financial institutions were starting to look at blockchain to see how, there might be private enterprise use cases for that. And we saw a number of projects start. And I think that probably partly inspired your first project of Big Chain DB. And another project, I think, interestingly, that you worked on, and especially relevant now, given the recent hype around NFTs, non-fungible tokens. You worked on a project called Ascribed, which I guess was an early look at how we might have the idea of using digital scarcity for anything from art or images or the sorts of things that are being addressed now. What can you just look at from your experience, having had that early viewpoint of it and what we're seeing now? What's your take on that? What lessons did you learn from that? What fed into your thinking around both Ocean Protocol and what's going on in the NFT space at the moment? What do you think people are possibly missing right now?
So we took already starting 2013, 2014, we took a very deep dive into what is intellectual property, what is copyright, what is data. From that, it was very clear that we are early. This concept of digital scarcity in the NFT world that is now pretty much accepted, I would say, amongst at least the people in the cryptos field, and then now expanding out into sports, media, music, all that sort of stuff. So this is great to see. We're very happy to see that our initial hypothesis was in fact correct. It was just a little bit early. But what we took out of that was this concept of intellectual property in a more general sense of what is intellectual property. And for us, that answer is data. And Ocean tries to answer this question in the broadest, most general sense possible by having a protocol, hence Ocean Protocol, and hence a token, because it's going to be owned by the community for the community. So Ascribe was trying to do kind of a traditional business model on top of the Bitcoin blockchain by creating digital scarcity, NFTs, and such like that. And as we've gone through the various iterations and pivots, we've seen that the next powerful business model is not actually necessarily a specific business model on top of the protocol itself, but it's actually businesses on top of a protocol like Ocean Protocol. So our job is to build Ocean Protocol, which is for access control. It's for orchestration of opening and closing doors to different resources like data, like intellectual property, AI algorithms, all that sort of stuff. And so that's the type of stuff that we're doing. We're actually building on top of any EVM compatible chain like Ethereum or Polygon, Polkadot, Kusama, Cosmos, these types of things, Avalanche are all examples that we've heard of. And so what that allows us to do is be a true protocol, agnostic to any different chain, but scalable globally, so that anybody can start sharing data, monetizing their data. And that's where Ocean's heading towards.
Okay, so it might be interesting then to take a little bit more of a deeper dive into that stack, I guess, because it's maybe for some of our viewers that aren't so aware, blockchains are good at what they do and what they've enabled, but they're famously not very good at holding lots of data. If you are comparing them to a traditional database, then it's very limited what you can store on the base chain. And then you mentioned there that the role of the Ocean Protocol is really to be that access control layer. Do you mind just expanding on that a little bit and describing where you fit in, what the protocol does, but then if the idea is that data is going to not require a central silo to store, that this data needs to be persistent and people need to be able to trust that it's going to be around for a long time and they're going to be able to access it when they need it. So could you just describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, in 2014, when we were looking at this, one of the early questions that we had was, where do you store data and how does that fit in the blockchain? And there was a lot of ideas of putting data on the blockchain, which when we thought through that to the very end, it didn't make any sense. And so we were very strong proponents very early on of projects like, for instance, Filecoin. More recently, projects like Arweave. And I believe there's one that just came out called FileStore, I believe, that's been backed by a lot of prominent people. We also built this project called BigChainDB, which was for actually storing data for databases type stuff, metadata and such like that. So we saw very early on that type of challenge required decentralized data stores as well as centralized data stores that everybody understands, like Amazon Web Services or IBM or what have you, or even on-premise stuff. But the way to unlock this wasn't to the traditional way where some central body holds your data and somehow has controls of the keys and stuff like that. What we saw was Ocean Protocol being kind of like, think of a honeybee going to various flowers, picking up pollen and stuff like that, and except the honeybee being the data scientist, needing to go to one flower for an algorithm, another one for the data, another one for analytics, another one for the storage, that type of thing. And that was the conceptual kind of simple model that you could use for Ocean, where if you could use blockchains for that type of turning on, turning off, turning on, turning off the access control with a token that underlies it and smart contracts, then you could start unlocking, regardless of whether it's a decentralized data store or decentralized algorithm with a centralized algorithm or centralized data store. You can unlock all of that. You daisy chain that together so you can orchestrate that as a data scientist, and you can make that globally scalable. So if I'm a data scientist in, let's say, Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, I don't know anybody at MIT, I don't know anybody at Stanford, but I have an idea, I have an algorithm, I need some data, I can go access some data that's stored at MIT, wherever it is, if it's centralized or decentralized. Then I can access some computation that's from Amazon in Washington State. Then I can get some analytics that are based in Austin, Texas, and then I bring that all together back in Ulaanbaatar, actually in the cloud, and then I have a result. And then I go off and I say, actually, I show it to some people, and I was physically showing this is a better algorithm. This is based on the data that I pulled. And so that type of capability for anybody on Earth to start setting up their data supply chains, orchestrate, and using the access control of Ocean Protocol, we think could be revolutionary.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions that comes up, or one of the concerns comes up, is when people talk about blockchains and that if something has been kind of timestamped on a blockchain, referenced on a blockchain, that it's there permanently, and that creates concerns. And then when you're looking at traditional existing data privacy rules and laws, the question is, there is a right to be forgotten as well that exists within law. If you look at GDPR, and people might not want their data to be there permanently on a blockchain. So, is that a concern that they still need to have? Is that something that you're able to address with the Ocean Protocol?
So one of the principles that we had was that the people who are the creators of the data or the owners of the data should have full control. And in this way, it very much aligns with GDPR in that you're pushing the control, the power, the autonomy back to the people who own it. And that's the ultimate vision, is that the people who create it, they own it, they control it, they can monetize it, but they can also sell those rights. Mm-hmm. And so a bad way to have implemented this would have been the typical GDPR style stuff, where you have cookies on these web servers and stuff like that. That is, in my mind, a failed policy. What you want is that people see that their data has value. They have the right to post it on a blockchain if they want, but we don't recommend that, but actually to store it in their own kind of, let's say, data vault that's secured with encryption, blockchain, crypto stuff. And from that data vault, you use something like Ocean, where somebody is able to go into that data vault, run an algorithm, leave without touching, without taking the data, but being a smarter algorithm because of that, and then paying you some crypto tokens for you allowing them to access that. That's exactly what we're going towards. And in that way, that fully respects GDPR. Now, whether somebody makes the move of storing information on the blockchain and all that sort of stuff, we don't recommend that, because we do think that this whole concept of a data vault is the rightful place where everybody should be storing their data, whether that's fully on your computer, you control it, or in the cloud that you fully control using Arweave or Filecoin or what have you. These are some of the decentralized tools that come up. But you could also put this on AWS. If you put this on AWS and you store it on, let's say, the Ireland server, it's not legally accessible by the US state. It's within Europe and stuff like that. Or you go into countries where it's the law where you have the data of every user in that country, where I think Europe is going that direction. Russia is always there, or already there. And so there's ways that we can protect people conceptually with government, but there's better ways with blockchain where you just encode it as you have a data vault, it's your data, and then you layer on top of it these smart contracts like from Ocean that allow you to share that data and monetize it. And I think that that is the right way to approach this, where there is some policy and social norms, but the technology is what gives you the truth, so that you know 100% that your data hasn't gone out in a way that you don't want it to.
And I guess that transparency is going to be key and open up new interesting features. So, if we get back to this idea of data now being tradable as a commodity, which, of course, people can sell data, and they do sell data. It's a big business. But, what else does this now potentially bring in? I know, can you touch on like integrations that you're working on with the DeFi marketplaces out there? How's this currently being applied? And can you give some examples or use cases with people that are now kind of developing on the protocol and how they're using it?
Yeah, so we're in the early stages of this. I think that one of the things that we've shown since October is that data can be an asset class. And by how we've done it is by marrying ourselves very tightly to the DeFi ecosystem, to the tools of the DeFi ecosystem, where we played a role in research and development ourselves. So we've been looking at a lot of the concepts that underpin DeFi for many years now. And we've always been a little bit ahead of the curve. But what was very clear was early last year that DeFi was something that was going to be a powerful force. And now I think as of today, there's something like over $50 billion locked in DeFi. Beginning of last year might have been $1 billion. So it's grown exponentially. And we think that this is something that allows data to be monetized. If we take a quick step back with Ocean, the first part of what we've talked about was making people feel safe, comfortable, and secure, cryptographically provably provable that this is true. That was one part of the Ocean side, the smart contracts. The other side was, what's the value of data? And I think that everybody understands visually that data is valuable. Now the question is, how do I unlock it with a monetization angle? What is the value? What's the price I charge for that? So all that is the second part of what Ocean has been doing, which is by using the tools that are now emerging in the DeFi space, we can have concepts like an initial data offering, where that data is publicly available, it's tradable, it's like a security in a sense. You can marry Ocean to lending tools like Cream protocol and Ava, so it's actually a collateral for lending. You can have people stake on your data and earn a portion of the rewards and the earnings from that. So that's very DeFi native. So all these different tools of DeFi, because of the way we've architected Ocean with an ERC20 token for Ocean token and data tokens, all the DeFi capabilities are available. And I think that that is the first step to showing people that data, A, has value, and B, you can apply the tools of finance to it. And now that we've done that in the last quarter, the last 3 months, I think that we are at the beginning of a $1 trillion race to monetize all the data that is available. And it's going to look different than monetizing the internet. It's going to look different than monetizing with SaaS businesses and all that sort of stuff in the past. It will be a fundamentally different model where a data vault is at the core. You have identity, and then you have Ocean on top of it. And then you're going to have all these DeFi tools that can access this data, show you what they've done, pay you for it, and you're just going to be richer because now you're going to have data farmers, people who go in various parts of the city just so they can share their geodata. You're going to have people who share their genetic information in a safe manner for research, regarding COVID. You're going to have people who collect environmental data. They're going to collect all types of data and become data farmers, just like you have YouTubers who now become experts in a certain area and they have a following of millions of people. You're going to have the same thing where people are going to start collecting data because they can see that it can be monetized. And so we're trying to help kickstart a data economy with Ocean at the underpinning where it's safe. And number two is there's money behind it, and then you can use all the tools behind it.
Yeah. I mean, you touched on it before. You mentioned you're quite early to the game in terms of looking at the idea of digital scarcity and how that might apply to what's become known as NFTs. And often say like the ideas are the easy part, and once you're in early and you kind of the vision has been sparked, it's easy to go and imagine the future, but it must be frustrating for how slow you have to move and wait for kind of other parts of the ecosystem, broader infrastructure to be developed. And some of that's still, there's still huge challenges there. You mentioned identity and reputation. These are two things which are going to tie everything together in blockchain once we get it right, but they're two of the biggest challenges as well. So maybe that has to be worked on, but not going to be fully realized till somewhere down the future. We're looking at, we've mentioned DeFi, but we've got AI, we've got IoT, we've got like this whole idea of a machine economy building. Great visions, but frustratingly, we're going to have to wait for it all to come together. I know you recently launched the third version of the protocol. Can you just touch on what features that upgrade has brought, and what are the most frustrating things for you that are just going to have to be down the line that kind of maybe slowing you down for at the moment, but you're working towards?
Well, the good thing is that after the crypto winter of 2017, 2018, I think a lot of teams just put their heads down and were able to have the space and the time to actually just plug away. So we're now seeing 50 to 100 teams that are building real technology, and the next wave of crypto tokens are coming. Some are more scammy, but there's a lot of really great stuff in there, which are working on identity. KYC, reputation. Some are working on the machine stuff, the IoT stuff, all that sort of stuff. But then we have the existing projects that have fought through the entire crypto winter, like for instance, like Chainlink and stuff like that. And with this constellation, the frustrations are a lot less. Back in the day when we were doing all this stuff, a lot of the ideas were deeply uncomfortable, like the concept of a bonding curve, for instance, where you have single-sided programmatic liquidity. That was just something that just didn't feel like it was realistic, and now it's real in Bounce, or it's real in Uniswap and stuff like that. So we're way more hopeful than we are frustrated at this stage. We're not in the stage of 2013, 14, 15, where it was blockchain without the Bitcoin, blockchain without the crypto, blockchain without all the criminals and all that sort of stuff. I think we're beyond all that type of frustrating discussions where people want to build closed systems. It's proven that these are open systems anybody can have. The DeFi space is $50 billion locked in. We're at now 2 trillion in terms of the total market cap of all of the crypto projects. We've had Coinbase going public. I think that we're doing much better. So with V3, what did we do? We exposed the Ocean contracts that we've been building. All that access control, all that orchestration was alive at the smart contract level, but it was also clear to us that it wasn't engaging enough for people. There's not as many smart contract people in the world who understand this at the level, at the smart contracts where they can engage in it. So V3 was about exposing that. How did we expose that? We had, number one, the Ocean market, which was just a way for people to upload data assets, apply Ocean smart contracts on it, and then start playing with it. So people could actually start seeing data assets as if they were in the Web3 world. Number two, we had data tokens. With data tokens, they're very powerful. we released this with the Ocean Market. What we did is with every data set, we applied data tokens on top of a data set. And all that a data token is access to that data set. So one data token gives you access to that data set. But because it's an ERC20 token, there's other advantages. That data token is an ERC20 token, and anything you can do with an ERC20 token right now, you can do with a data token. So you can inject it into an automated market maker and provide liquidity. People can actually trade it as if it is a stock or a share. So all the tools of DeFi are applied now on top of, kind of synthetically, on top of a data asset. So if your data asset is valuable, if it is being traded often, if people are consuming it, then its value could rise. It could start getting traded and stuff like that. And so that is a powerful concept where you can kind of put the tools of the Web3 world on top of a data asset, or any type of thing like an algorithm, computation, analytics and stuff like that. So that's the second thing. So we had Ocean Market, which just exposed all the goodness that was in the smart contracts. We have data tokens, which essentially DeFiifies data. Yeah, we put DeFi tools on top of data. And number three, we have this concept of an IDO, which is an initial data offering. And what that is just a formal name that says, if you have used the Ocean Market or Ocean smart contracts to release your token, you have a data token on top of it, that token is like a security. It's like a stock. It is like Ocean token itself that people can buy, sell, trade, hold, put into their crypto wallets and stuff like that, and hold for the long term. One of the very first kind of initial data market offerings we've had was this project called BDP, Big Data Protocol. They went and they secured something like $6 billion staked for the initial kind of disbursement of tokens. And then now they are building on top of Ocean technology, the ability to release thousands of data assets. Each of them can be IDO'd, initial data offering, to their people. And so that makes us very happy. We have about 8 or 9 other projects that are building their own data marketplaces on top of Ocean. And so we think that that is one of the best ways to scale. We want to build the Ocean Market as a reference marketplace so that people could see what it is. And now we have about 10 different projects that are building on top of Ocean to build their own marketplace. And as I believe Trent McConaughey said already in 2017, we want thousands of data marketplaces on top of Ocean, because we like to work on the smart contract layer. And then we like to let the people who really truly understand marketing, selling, collecting the data to actually start selling that on top of Ocean using Ocean technology.
Yeah. So I guess that leads us on. You've mentioned the fact that you're building as an agnostic layer, interoperable, future-proofing hopefully for different networks as they emerge or gain traction. But I guess this is the million-dollar question back to scalability. Ethereum's still out there, still market leader at the moment, has some challenges. But again, if we kind of just look back to data storage and access control, how it stands, your Googles, your Amazons, they're getting billions, if not trillions of calls to their servers every day with instructions how to kind of manipulate that data. Where do we sit here? What is your vision around scalability? How have you kind of addressed that in your early design? And is this truly going to be scalable to replace those centralized models in the near future or in the longer term?
So, a lot of the work that we did in the early days, 2015, 2016, was about consensus algorithms, which the more efficient the consensus algorithm, the better a chain will scale. So we looked at proof of work, proof of authority, proof of stake, all of these things. And now proof of authority, proof of stake, these are now hitting the mainstream in terms of scaling. So Binance Smart Chain is one of the main proof of authority networks. You have proof of stake networks like Cosmos, Polkadot, and a couple other ones. I believe also Polygon and stuff like that. We did a lot of work on this stuff. These technologies, these platforms, these layer one technologies, they're all going to find a sweet spot in terms of scaling for their specific use cases. And Ocean's job is purely to be compatible with each one. Whenever they hit a maturity level where Ocean smart contracts can live, as well as the Ocean market can live on top of their chain, we're doing that. And that's part of the strategy. So as these networks get stronger, get broader adoption and become more, the awareness builds around them, Ocean will be right there on top of it. And in that way, we're going to be married to each of these chains. And as the data economy grows, or as these chains grow, then you can have the data economy primitives on top of those chains from day one. And so there's nothing that stops data from turning into an asset from a technology perspective. It's only the awareness side. And as we've seen with NFTs, it could take longer, it could be shorter, but now that we have, let's say 100 million crypto holders all thinking about crypto, NFTs, data is the next logical one. You have identity, you have IoT. We have forks in the fire for all of those to help them start unlocking their data. But data is kind of a core foundation of something you can monetize in a native Web3 manner. And so we're positioning Ocean to be right there in the center.
Okay, thanks. Now, we spoke about the V3 upgrade. I know next week, or maybe by the time this is published or around the same time, there's a new feature that you're due to bring into play, compute to data. Are you able to give us a sneak peek on that, what that's kind of going to be about?
So one of the things that we had when we released V3 was we weren't able to put compute to data in the market. Compute to data as a capability, a feature was available from all along, starting I think May last year. That's when we released it. But to get it into Ocean market. So all this means is that within the Ocean market, you're going to be able to buy the data set, but also you're going to also be able to invoke the compute to data function in the Ocean market, pay for it using Ocean tokens, etc., and use it with a data set that you find. We think that's just an extension of the capability of Ocean market, but it's very powerful because, as we said before, if you're dealing with command line interface, which is basically smart contracts, it's a lot harder to get adoption from most normal people. You're dealing with highly technical people. Mm-hmm. By putting it into Ocean market, it exposes it to the entire world who is crypto savvy, who understand MetaMask, who understand just basically going in to the browser and starting to do what they want to do. And so we think that compute to data, not only is it the most asked for feature from all the enterprises and partners that we've been working with, because it's this critical piece of giving people the comfort and security to share their data. It also, by putting it in Ocean market, it exposes it and allows people to play with it and touch it and feel it in a way that they can relate to.
Great. So just conscious of time here, what else are we looking at on your roadmap here? What's your plans for the next 6 months and beyond?
A lot of it has to do with the multi-chain and hardening. So by getting compute to data onto the Ocean market, we think those are the components that we have. Now there's the additional stuff on top of it, which is just making sure that we have little tweaks and features and modules that a lot of people have asked for to help with reputation, maybe to make it safer and more predictable if you're staking and publishing the data. Making sure that Ocean can go onto these multi-chains, as I spoke about, in a consistent manner. Our early indications with Polygon is that there's no difference in terms of the experience for users. Some of the users have already ported some of their data over into Polygon. No difference, same user experience, perfect, that's what we're looking for. And so as we can port these onto multiple chains, we need to just make sure that that experience is consistent across. I think that makes up most of 2021. And then, as we've been talking about in our social media, it's a year of scaling. So this technology is there, it's ready. We're going to be on multiple chains. It works with DeFi. We're going to make some tweaks to make it safer and more comfortable and just make it just consistent across every platform. Let's get the data into this network. Let's get this data into all these different Ocean markets across these various chains and start seeing what happens. And I think that by the end of the year, we're going to start seeing people, maybe it'll happen a lot faster than what happened at NFTs, which took 7 years, but people starting to say data is an asset class. I'm going to actually start buying and selling data on the Ocean market, and let's see what comes out. Maybe there's 100 marketplaces instead of 10 that are building on Ocean. Maybe instead of 500 data sets, there's now 500,000. What we see is that if we have the right pieces in place, that exponential growth can happen very, very quickly, as we saw with, for instance, the automated market makers, the lending protocols, everything like that. And so one of the things that my co-founder Trent used to always say, because he worked in the AI field for so long in the crypto, the chip field, was anything that touches Moore's law assumes the characteristics of Moore's law. And what is that fundamental principle? It's the exponential. What we're trying to do is touch DeFi with blockchain, and that is already on an exponential curve. So as long as we're intersecting with the crypto community, the DeFi community, and then we have our tooling ready, it's going to take on an exponential curve very, very quickly once the awareness comes.
Great. And so the most important thing for any network such as these, you've built the foundational layers. It's an open source system. Anyone can come in and build on it. It's useless if people don't come in and build on it. In terms of the basic toolkit, if people are interested to come and explore the Ocean Protocol, start testing it out, what's the basic toolkit? And then how do they start getting involved? What do they need to do to come and start testing? And what's your community like, and what support are they going to get?
It's gotten really great in the last 3 or 4 months, where we have a lot more community engagement. We've scaled up the team a little bit. We had about 5 or 6 core developers plus 5 or 6 other core team members. Now we're, I think, up to over 30. Plus we had community. We had several hundred applications for the ambassadors. Many of them are technical, who are joining in and starting. We have the Ocean Academy. So where do people go just to get the first thing? oceanprotocol.com. From there, you can go into the developers type stuff. You can go to Ocean Academy. You can go more into the docs and just kind of understand what's going on. We have a very vibrant Discord channel. Reddit is starting to get going, but oceanprotocol.com is the best place to start, get going. And then from there, you can go to github.com/oceanprotocol, all these kind of things. But we're very happy that the technical developer community is coming along with us and being very, very active. So thank you to all those folks.
That's great. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fascinating not only to hear about some of your previous experience, someone that's been around in this space for what seems like a lifetime, I'm sure. So thanks for sharing all those thoughts. And I would encourage anyone to go do as you said, go to the Ocean Protocol website, start digging through the documentation. It's all very interesting, and hopefully people do start building on it. And we'll hopefully get to speak to you again some point in the future to see how things are going.
Great. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Cheers.